The morning of November 11th arrived with that particular kind of cold that settles deep into your bones, the kind that reminds you winter is coming to Virginia, whether you're ready or not. I was standing on my front porch in Arlington, watching the frost melt off the grass as the sun climbed higher. My breath came out in small clouds, and I pulled my old Marine Corps jacket tighter around my chest. The fabric was worn thin in places, but I couldn't bring myself to replace it. Some things carry too much history to throw away. Inside the house, I could hear my daughter Sarah preparing breakfast. The smell of coffee and bacon drifted through the screen door, mixing with the crisp autumn air. It was Veterans Day, and like every year for the past 15 years since I'd retired, I'd wake up early, put on this jacket, and spend a few minutes outside thinking about the men I'd served with. I heard the screen door creak open behind me, followed by small footsteps. My grandson Tommy, just turned 7 last month, came padding out in his Superman pajamas and untied sneakers. His dark hair was sticking up in every direction, and he was rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Morning, Grandpa," he said, his voice still thick with sleep. "Morning, soldier," I replied, using the nickname I'd given him when he was born. He smiled at that. He always did. Tommy came and stood next to me, looking out at the quiet suburban street. A few houses down, Old Man Peterson was already putting up his American flag. The metallic clink of the flagpole echoed in the still morning air. Tommy watched him for a moment, then looked up at me with those big brown eyes that reminded me so much of his grandmother. "Grandpa," he said, his voice carrying that innocent curiosity that only children possess, "do you miss the flag they took from you?" I felt my breath catch in my throat. The coffee cup in my hand suddenly felt heavier. I looked down at Tommy, trying to understand what he meant. "What flag, buddy?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Tommy shifted his weight from foot to foot, the way kids do when they're not sure if they should say something. "Mom was talking to Aunt Jennifer on the phone last week. She said something about how they took your flag when you left the Marines, and how it wasn't fair because you were a good soldier. I mean Marine." He corrected himself quickly. I'd taught him the difference. My mind raced back through the years, trying to understand what Sarah might have been talking about. Then it hit me like a punch to the gut. She'd been talking about my retirement ceremony, about the flag, about what happened. I set my coffee cup down on the porch railing and knelt down so I was eye level with Tommy. The cold from the wooden planks seeped through my jeans, but I barely noticed. "Tommy, that's a complicated story," I said slowly. "I like stories," he replied, his face brightening, "especially your stories about the Marines." I glanced back through the screen door. Sarah was still in the kitchen, probably giving us this moment intentionally. She knew how I was on Veterans Day, reflective, quiet, lost in memories I couldn't quite shake. "Tell you what," I said to Tommy, "how about we go inside, get some of your mum's famous pancakes, and I'll tell you about that flag. But you've got to promise me something." "What?" Tommy asked, his eyes wide with anticipation. "You've got to listen to the whole story, not just the parts that sound exciting, the whole thing. Deal?" Tommy nodded enthusiastically and grabbed my hand. His small fingers wrapped around 2 of mine, and we walked back inside together. The warmth of the house enveloped us, and the smell of maple syrup had joined the bacon and coffee. Sarah looked up from the stove, saw us holding hands, and smiled that knowing mother's smile. "You two look serious," she said, flipping a pancake with practiced ease. "Grandpa's going to tell me a story," Tommy announced, climbing up onto one of the kitchen chairs. Sarah caught my eye, and I gave her a small nod. She knew which story. She'd been there for part of it, after all. She was 19 when it happened, home from college for my retirement ceremony. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat down across from Tommy. Sarah brought over a plate stacked with pancakes and set it between us. Tommy immediately started drowning his stack in syrup, while I just sat there, my hands wrapped around the warm coffee mug, trying to figure out where to begin. "Grandpa," Tommy prompted, his mouth already full of pancake. "Chew first, then talk," Sarah reminded him gently. I took a deep breath. "The flag your mom mentioned wasn't just any flag, Tommy. It was the one they were supposed to present to me at my retirement ceremony. After 26 years of service, when a Marine retires, there's a ceremony. It's formal, dignified, and at the end, they present you with an American flag that's been flown in your honor." Tommy swallowed his mouthful of pancake. "So they didn't give you the flag?" "They did," I said quietly, "but it wasn't the one they were supposed to give me." And understanding why means I need to tell you about a young Marine named Marcus Webb, and about what it means to do the right thing, even when it costs you everything. Sarah had stopped cooking and was leaning against the counter, her arms folded across her chest. She'd heard parts of this story over the years, but never the full truth. It started about 6 months before my retirement, I began. I was a master sergeant at Quantico, in charge of training. It was supposed to be my victory lap, an easy assignment after 2 deployments in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. Just train the next generation and ride off into the sunset with full honors. The kitchen was silent, except for the tick of the clock on the wall and the occasional creak of the house settling. Tommy had stopped eating, his attention fully on me now. But things don't always go the way you plan, I continued. And sometimes the hardest battles you fight aren't on some foreign battlefield. Sometimes they're right in front of you, in your own unit. The rain was coming down in sheets that April afternoon at Quantico. I was in my office going over training schedules when I heard the knock on my door. It was soft, almost hesitant, not the sharp, confident knock of a Marine who's sure of their place in the world. "Enter," I called out, not looking up from my paperwork. The door opened slowly. I glanced up and saw Lance Corporal Marcus Webb standing in the doorway. He was 22 years old, built like he could run through a brick wall. He'd been in my training unit for 3 months, excelling at every physical challenge we threw at him. But standing in my doorway that day, he looked nothing like the confident young Marine I'd seen on the training field. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw clenched tight, and his hands were shaking slightly at his sides. "Master Sergeant," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you, off the record." I set down my pen and gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Close the door, Webb." He did, then sat down carefully. The rain drummed against the window, filling the silence between us. "What's going on?" I asked. Marcus Webb took a deep breath and looked me straight in the eye. "Master Sergeant, I need to report an incident. It's Staff Sergeant Hendricks." My stomach dropped. Staff Sergeant Dale Hendricks was my second in command, a career Marine with 18 years of service. We'd served together in Iraq during the surge. He'd saved my life once during an ambush outside Fallujah. He was scheduled to retire the same day I was. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice harder now. What Marcus Webb told me over the next 45 minutes made my blood run cold. He described a pattern of abuse and intimidation that had been going on for months. Hendricks had been systematically targeting younger Marines of color, extra duties, verbal harassment, and falsifying training records to make them look incompetent. Marcus had documentation, photos of altered records, text messages from other Marines, even a recording of one particularly vicious dressing down where Hendricks had used racial slurs. "Why didn't you report this sooner?" I asked when he finished. Marcus looked down at his hands. "Because everyone knows you and Hendricks are tight, Master Sergeant. Because he saved your life. Because when Private Johnson tried to report something similar last month, he got transferred to a supply unit in the middle of nowhere." The pieces clicked into place. Johnson's sudden transfer, the unusually high rate of training failures among certain Marines, the tension I'd sensed but couldn't identify. I'd been blind because I hadn't wanted to see. "Give me the documentation," I said. "All of it." Marcus hesitated. "Master Sergeant, if I do this, it's going to blow back on me. My career is over." "Your career is over if you don't report it," I said firmly. "I need you to be stronger than that." He nodded and forwarded me everything. The evidence was damning. "I'm going to take this to the Colonel," I told him. This afternoon, after he left, I sat alone in my office, listening to the rain. I thought about Hendricks, pulling me out of that burning Humvee outside Fallujah. I thought about the decades of friendship, the shared deployments, the brotherhood. And then I thought about Marcus Webb's shaking hands and the other young Marines who'd been victimized. I picked up the phone and called Colonel Richardson's office. "Colonel," I said, "I have evidence of misconduct in my unit. It involves Staff Sergeant Hendricks." There was a long pause. "You're sure about this, Master Sergeant Reeves?" "I'm sure, sir." "My office, 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at the photo on my desk. Me and Hendricks in Baghdad, both of us grinning despite the heat and dust. I turned the photo face down. The investigation moved fast. Within a week, 3 more Marines came forward. Within 2 weeks, the Inspector General's office had taken over. Within a month, Staff Sergeant Dale Hendricks was facing court-martial, and I became the most hated man in the training command. It didn't matter that I'd done the right thing. What mattered to a vocal minority was that I'd betrayed one of my own, that I'd destroyed the career of a decorated Marine who'd saved my life. The phone calls started first, anonymous voices telling me I was a traitor. Then came the social media posts from Marines I'd served with, cryptic messages about loyalty. Sarah would come home from college on weekends to find me sitting in the dark. My wife Jennifer, stood by me like a rock, but I could see the worry in her eyes every time the phone rang. The hardest part was Hendricks himself. He sent me one letter from the brig. It said only 4 words: "You killed us both." In a way, he was right. My retirement ceremony was scheduled for June 15th. The closer it got, the more awkward things became. Marines who should have been planning the event did the bare minimum. My guest list shrank as people suddenly had conflicts. Colonel Richardson called me into his office 3 weeks before the ceremony. He was a good man, career officer. "Master Sergeant Reeves," he said, "we need to talk about your retirement ceremony." "The Commandant's office has been receiving pressure," Richardson continued. "Some senior officers who served with Hendricks are pushing to have your ceremony minimized." "Minimized, sir?" "Cancelled, actually. They want you to process out with a simple desk ceremony. After 26 years, 2 deployments, a Bronze Star, I was going to be shuffled out like I was the one who'd done something wrong." "Sir, is that what you want?" Richardson's jaw tightened. "Hell no. You did the right thing, and you're being punished for it. Here's what I can do. We'll have the ceremony, full honors, but..." He paused. "The flag that was set aside for you, the one that flew over the Capitol building, there's been an administrative mix-up." "An administrative mix-up," I repeated flatly. "You'll get a flag, but it won't be that one. It'll be standard issue. I'm sorry, Master Sergeant." The ceremony itself was exactly what Richardson had promised. Technically correct, but emotionally hollow. About 40 people showed up. Marcus Webb stood in the back in his dress blues, and when our eyes met, he gave me a small nod. When they presented me with the flag, folded into the traditional triangle, I could feel the difference. This wasn't a flag that had been specially selected, specially flown. It was just a flag. Sarah was crying. Jennifer held my hand so tight I thought she might break my fingers, and I stood there at attention, accepting the flag and the hollow words, and I felt something break inside me. Back in my kitchen in Arlington 15 years later, I looked at my grandson, Tommy. He'd been silent through most of the story, his pancakes forgotten and growing cold. Sarah had tears running down her face. "So they did give you a flag," Tommy said slowly, "but not the right one." "They gave me a flag," I confirmed, "just not the one I'd earned." "That's not fair," Tommy said, his voice carrying that edge of righteous anger that children get when they first encounter real injustice. "No, it wasn't," I agreed. "But you know what, buddy? I learned something from that whole experience." "What?" I stood up and walked over to the living room where a flag hung in a frame on the wall. But it wasn't in the usual triangular fold. This one was displayed open, stretched out flat. Tommy and Sarah followed me. "This is the flag they gave me at my ceremony," I said. And for years, I couldn't look at it without feeling angry. I traced my finger along the edge of the frame. But about 5 years ago, something changed. I got a call from Marcus Webb. He'd made lieutenant by then. He told me he'd just finished his own retirement ceremony after 20 years of service. And do you know what he said? Tommy shook his head. He said, "Master Sergeant, they gave me the whole ceremony, the honors, the special flag, everything. And the only reason I got to have that moment, the only reason my career was possible, was because you stood up when it mattered." And then he said, "That flag they gave you might not be the one you deserved, but it represents something more important than ceremony. It represents integrity." Sarah came to stand beside us, and I put my arm around her shoulders. "I realized Marcus was right," I continued. "Yeah, they took away the ceremonial flag, but they couldn't take away what I'd actually done. They couldn't take away the Marines I'd protected, the culture I'd helped change. And this flag, this simple standard issue flag, it represents all of that. It represents choosing to do what's right even when the cost is high." Tommy looked up at me. "Do you still miss the other flag? The special one?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but then I think about Marcus Webb and the other young Marines who came after him, who had better experiences because someone finally stood up. And I realize that this flag right here is exactly the one I should have." "Because it's real," Tommy said quietly. "Because it's real," I agreed. "The fancy flag would have been for show. This one is for truth." Sarah hugged me then, really hugged me. "I'm proud of you, Dad," she whispered. "I don't think I ever really told you that." "I know, sweetheart," I said. "I always knew." Tommy tugged on my jacket. "Grandpa, can we go to the parade today? And can I tell people that my grandpa is a hero?" I knelt down, putting my hands on his small shoulders. "You can tell people your grandpa is a Marine who tried to do the right thing. That's all any of us can do." "But you'd do it again, wouldn't you?" he asked, "even knowing what it cost you." I looked up at Sarah, who nodded. I looked at the flag on the wall. I thought about Marcus Webb, and all the Marines who came after him. "In a heartbeat," I said, "every single time." We went to the Veterans Day parade that afternoon. Tommy insisted on wearing a little Marine Corps cap I'd bought him, and he marched beside me with his chest puffed out, proud to be walking with his grandfather. One old Marine, had to be in his 80s, stopped me on the street. He looked at my jacket, then looked me in the eye. "Master Sergeant," he said, "I heard about what you did at Quantico. Took guts, needed doing. Semper Fi, Marine." He shook my hand and moved on before I could respond. But those words stayed with me, warming me from the inside. That night, after Sarah had taken Tommy home, I sat alone in my living room with the lights off, looking at that flag on the wall. The streetlight outside cast shadows across it, making the stars seem to shimmer. I thought about all the flags I'd seen in my career, flags raised over bases in Iraq and Afghanistan, flags presented at funerals for fallen Marines. Each one was just fabric and thread, but each one represented something larger. This flag had become the most important one of all, not because of where it had flown, but because of what it represented. The idea that integrity matters more than ceremony, that doing right matters more than being celebrated for it. I walked closer to the flag, reading the small plaque beneath it that I'd had made years ago. It said simply, "Presented to Master Sergeant James Reeves, USMC, June 15, 2010. For service with honor." I'd added the last 3 words myself. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Marcus Webb. "Happy Veterans Day, Master Sergeant. Hope you're doing well. My son asked me today who my hero was in the Marines. I showed him your picture, Semper Fi." I read that message 3 times, letting it sink in. Then I texted back, "Semper Fidelis, Lieutenant. Always faithful, to each other and to what's right." As I got ready for bed, I thought about Tommy's question from that morning. "Do you miss the flag they took from you?" And I realized that he'd gotten it exactly backwards. They hadn't taken a flag from me. They'd given me the wrong one, sure, but in doing so, they'd given me something more valuable. They'd given me a constant reminder that character isn't built in ceremonies or measured by accolades. It's forged in the hard choices, the lonely decisions, the moments when you choose between what's easy and what's right. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, but not before taking one last look at that flag. It wasn't the flag I'd expected. It wasn't the flag I'd thought I deserved. It was better, because every time I look at it, I remember that I chose truth over comfort, justice over friendship, integrity over approval, and that's a flag worth flying, ceremony or not. In the darkness of my bedroom, I could hear the wind picking up outside. Somewhere in America, other veterans were lying awake, thinking about their own service, their own sacrifices, their own hard choices. We were all connected by something larger, an oath to defend and protect, to uphold and honor, to serve with integrity regardless of the cost. And as I drifted off to sleep, I realized that Tommy had taught me something important today. By asking that innocent question, he'd forced me to finally articulate what that flag really meant, to finally understand that what I'd lost in ceremony, I'd gained in character. They didn't take a flag from me. They gave me the one I needed, a reminder that the truest honor isn't given by others but earned by ourselves, one hard choice at a time. That's the story I'll pass down to Tommy. That's the legacy I want to leave behind. Not the Bronze Star or the commendations, or even the 26 years of service. Just the simple truth that integrity matters, that standing up for what's right is worth the cost, and that the most meaningful flag you'll ever receive is the one that represents who you chose to be when it would have been easier to look away. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, not just to the core, but to the truth.